Anybody who's done any kind of reading, it should be aware of that. An interesting point. So that's my position. But then multiple things develop from that. Yeah, sorry, this is not quite as efficient as I was planning. Headache. All right, so look at the mediums of exchange. That's actually a direct way of telling, simply because it is absolutely critical. Early on, you have barter, direct exchange of things for things, though, in different types and everything like that. Because you have to. That's all you've got. You're a farmer. You've got some wheat. He makes boots. You want some boots. What are you going to do? Well, you give him some wheat and he gives you some boots. He gets enough food to live on, and you have some boots to help you make more food for him to live on. It's very simple. Then, as you get to, say, more sophisticated ages, or parts of the world, of course, because everything's fractal. It's all happening in different levels of, different parts at the same time. People still barter, obviously. But eventually, civilization is far more powerful, far more knowledgeable, far more wealthy. We have effectively more resources, even though it's still the same old Earth and the same old people. Now, what do we have is we have things based on gold, basically. I mean, other things too, but basically the most precious forms. A special combination, of course, gold has a position because of a special combination of scarcity, durability, so on and so on. I mean, but you see what's happened. It's still resource for resource, but it has become somewhat abstracted to this sort of significant marker resource for all other ones. Why? So there's a bit of space there. You see the sort of directly. Now we're this for this. That space, that abstraction, is actually a measure of our power because we feel safe enough that, yeah, even though you cannot eat this shiny bit of metal, it is universally valued enough that if everybody is not starving to death all the time, then they basically again, this comes up over and over in this argument. What's interesting is it has to do with time and it has to do with the future, in the sense that you are, or trust, confidence, or rather, I'm not talking about future in the sense of time and space travel or anything, but in the sense that the reason, this is to support my argument, the reason you can exchange that gold, or you can have trust in the value of that gold, is trust. Is that you trust that it's like a stock in a way. You trust that civilization will not collapse enough that gold will be valuable. If civilization collapses and everyone is back to fighting for every scrap of grain and beef just to stay alive through winter, then that gold is, of course, worthless because it's from a more advanced, essentially, in a way, it's from a more advanced form of economy than your current reality can support. But by the time you get to the medieval ages, civilization is pretty well entrenched. There's quite a bit more knowledge than Paleolithic times. And you can trust that bag of gold is pretty much going to be worth something, pretty much, anywhere that there's civilization, and so on. There's trust, there's confidence in the future because it reflects how much actual resources we have collectively as a species, as humanity, not at any local level. I'm talking sort of generally. Our culture, sort of, which contains the ideas, the things like that. Okay, so now continue advancing, and we're still using precious metals, all the way up until fairly recently, which makes sense because, again, in the 1700s, the 1500s, again, we did not have unlimited resources. We had a lot. We had colossal, amazing, increasingly resources. But once we really hit the modern industrial age, again, I think it might have even been, say, I don't know, 1900. I mean, we've had quantum theory for over 100 years. Most people think quantum is like a brand new thing or it came out in the 70s or something. The old quantum theory started in 1876. Okay? That's like amazingly long time ago from a scientific standpoint. Anyway, so now, of course, continuing my structure here, we've completely decoupled money from a material standard, and from a material object, from material resource. We don't back our money with gold anymore. We just back it with the confidence in the government that issues the money, essentially. And again, though, I used to be against that, and in a way I still sort of am, because people like to play games. It would still be kind of nice to have the gold or something as a bit of a marker, and then, have some rules based around that. But come to think of it, maybe that isn't necessary, because what happens in a world where there are unlimited resources is, well, there's unlimited resources. What's interesting about that is that is a quantitative change that leads to a qualitative change. Those are two, that's a paired set of concepts, quality and quantity. They're sort of a two-sided thing. That's just from my sort of theory that everything is composed of pairs of opposed qualities like that, or opposed concepts. Anyway, so at this point, basically, with the gold, with the wheat for wheat, or the wheat for something else, the wheat for shoes, there's very little trust. You're just saying, I've got some physical stuff, you've got some physical stuff, I want your stuff, you want my stuff, here you go, we'll have a trade. It's kind of hard, it's not very sophisticated, there's not a lot of complexity to the interaction. You get to medieval ages, you actually can have coined money or other things. They did use deeds and other things back then, but you basically have a more abstract form of property, and you can actually use that to get almost anything you want. Much more powerful, much more sophisticated transaction. And again, it's based because you're based that this sophisticated product, this gold money that's been stamped with somebody's image or something like that, you're trusting that this is actually worth something. And it is because it's linked to the power of our civilization. Now you get to the modern age, and you have greenbacks, or whatever, like U.S. money, for example, or Canadian money. It's still, and of course, a lot of times, like Canadians don't even use. We typically don't even touch like physical money much anymore. We just use a debit, like money. You just go to work, money gets deposited as a series of numbers into your bank account. Electronic information, basically. And we never even access it as physical money. We just swipe a card and we say, oh, that's $15, and we got a little bit of groceries. So, again, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that, because it's just a form of bean counting. Even that word, bean counting. I've been using that all day, kind of, because I hate our modern bean counting society. I mean, that aspect of it. But come to think of it again, if the maximum form of wealth you have is beans, then bean counting is very important, because if you don't have enough beans to get you through the winter, you die. Which again, it's interesting. I've literally forgotten that, because I don't live in that age. Like, we have enough beans to feed everybody, so it is getting more and more pointless to. Of course, you still have to count them, right? I mean, yes, you do have to have bureaucracy. You do have to have records. Money is not going to disappear, even in this new age. It's funny, actually. It's kind of an interesting point. I hadn't thought of this before just this moment, actually. Pretty cool concept. Is that it's funny how often the common futuristic... This is really... that really works. The common futuristic word for money in the future is credits, actually, when I think of it. When I think of generic sci-fi, it's usually, Earth credits or this and that. Because that's what the money of the future, the bean counting, essentially, the post money, is credit. Because that's what credit is. Credit is an extension of resources based on trust that, through over the course of time, typically the money will be repaid, but one way or another, it's an extension of trust. It's not even a physical resource at all. I mean, it does have a link to physical resources, but it is not absolute, because when you hit the point of when I say unlimited resources, and again, this is interesting. This just occurs to me as well. I don't mean unlimited in an infinite fashion, obviously. Again, use your brain. But what I mean, I just kind of realized, actually, what I mean in a more sophisticated sense. And this occurred to me on the way back up, when I was coming back from my friend's place. Another extension of that. So I talked about, the age of resources. Well, I've all of a sudden realized, again, another set of, the markers, basically. And that's what it is. The marker of the first age, is scarcity of resources, specifically, scarcity of resources. This is now removed. We do not have